1C, exercise risk. So there is risk associated with exercise, and we want to mitigate that risk as much as possible. So uh, risk associated with physical activity and exercise. Uh, Although the benefits of regular physical activity are well established, participating in exercise is associated with increased risk of musculoskeletal injury and cardiovascular complications such as sudden cardiac death and acute myocardial infarction. So you exercise, your risk of an orthopedic injury goes up as opposed to sitting on the couch. But if you sit on the couch too long, your risk of orthopedic injury goes up once you stand up. So generally, we recommend people to be active. And there is a risk associated with exercise of cardiovascular problems, but the risk is relatively small. So oftentimes in such individuals, there's an underlying problem that was there, and it was just a matter of time, a ticking time bomb, when the person was going to have problems. So if they didn't have problems today, then maybe they would have had problems in a month from now. So the musculoskeletal injury, the most common exercise-related complication. It is often associated with exercise intensity, the nature of the activity, pre-existing conditions, and musculoskeletal anomalies. So you want to make sure that you do what you can to decrease the risks. And if you exercise reasonably, you decrease the risk of a musculoskeletal injury. If you do nothing and then you start doing high-intensity exercise for an extended period of time, which is what you see a lot of beginners do when they start a workout program, they just go jump in head first and do really too much activity. They need to ease into it. Then your risk of an injury goes up. You see somebody that starts a CrossFit program and they've never done really any types of exercise before. That's probably going to result in some sort of injury. So having sudden cardiac death or having a heart attack is associated with vigorous activity. It's much less common than a musculoskeletal injury, but it can lead to long-term morbidity and mortality. And really, one of the things you need to watch out with that will increase your risk of a cardiac episode or a cardiac problem is if you're doing high-intensity exercise that you weren't accustomed to before. And oftentimes, what you'll see is things like racquetball. You'll see people having problems during that. You also see people in the north, where I'm from, they'll shovel snow. And in shoveling snow, you're cold, you're physically cold, so you don't get an appropriate warm-up. And to lift the snow is quite strenuous and heavy. And you got to do it until the driveway is cleared. So you may be doing the exercise for a much longer period of time than you would normally. If you go for a walk, you start to feel tired, you go back home. Or if you're on a treadmill, you just get off the treadmill. But if you're shoveling a driveway, you're shoveling that sucker until it's clear. Another instance where you see it is in things like deer hunting. You shoot the deer. Oh, poor baby. You shoot the deer, and then you have to haul it back to your car. Some people will say, "Oh, you just hook it onto the back of the ATV." That's fine. But if you have to haul it and drag it, again, you're going to drag it to the car. You're not going to drag it 100 feet and then stop. You're going to drag it until you get to a place where you can do whatever you do with a dead deer. So, again, instances where you're kind of forced to do more activity than you would necessarily want to, and those will increase your risk of cardiac issues. In most instances, if you start doing, most people will quit before they get to a point where they have a problem, or it's again a ticking time bomb sort of instance or issue where the blood vessel was going to have a plaque rupture in it, whether it happened today or it happened a week from now or 6 months from now, it was going to happen, kind of regardless. So absolute annual risk of exercise-related death among high school and college athletes, 1 per about 133,000 men, 1 per 770,000 women. The risk is definitely low. But even the other day I was looking at something and I saw where a football player had passed away, and I think you see that fairly commonly. So, yes, it's not a lot of children die, and we don't want any child to die, especially from something like playing a sport in the way that the sport is supposed to be played. But you will see that happening. It should be noted that the rates, although low, include all sport-related non-traumatic deaths. Of the 136 total identifiable causes of death, 100 were caused by cardiovascular disease. So exercise-related cardiac events in adults. In general, exercise does not provoke cardiovascular events in healthy individuals with normal cardiovascular systems. So again, something was already going wrong. Exercise was just the precipitating cause. Risk is related to the absence or presence of occult or known cardiovascular disease, exercise intensity, age, and physical activity. The onset study showed that the risk of a heart attack during or immediately following vigorous intensity exercise was 50 times greater for the habitual sedentary compared to individuals who exercise vigorously for 1 hour 5 days a week. So again, if you exercise on a regular basis, it should mitigate the risk. And for individuals that are sedentary, we still want them to exercise. It's just don't start with high intensity exercise. Start with more moderate activity and work your way up. The prevention of exercise-related cardiac events, to a certain extent, just use some common sense. Healthcare professionals should know the pathological conditions associated with exercise-related events so that physically active children and adults can be properly evaluated. Physically active individuals should know the nature of cardiac prodrome. I don't know what that word is. I'll have to look that one up. Symptoms and seek prompt medical care if such symptoms develop. So if you have a symptom of cardiovascular disease, shortness of breath, dizziness, fainting, even nausea, all those could be indications of cardiac issues, and you should seek the appropriate care. For high school and college athletes, they should undergo a pre-participation screening. It's the physical that they made us all go through in high school, and if you play college sports, then I guess they make you also do it in college. And if you play pro sports, I'm sure they make you do it for that as well. Athletes with known cardiac complications or a family history should be evaluated prior to competition using established guidelines. So again, if you have an idea that, hey, there might be a problem with this individual, make sure that you get it checked out. One thing that I consistently say with this section is that, and I think it's in the next chapter 2 as well, is that you don't want to fall through the cracks. You don't want to find a loophole in which you have to exercise and you don't have to be evaluated. For most people, healthy individuals, you don't have to go through a major evaluation to start exercising. You should be fine. But if there's an indication that you have a problem, whether it be orthopedic or pulmonary or cardiac or something kind of out of the blue that's just unique to you, those things should be evaluated, and you should use some caution in those instances. Again, if you're healthy and you don't seem to have any problems and there's no family history, go start exercising. It'll be fine. And even for those at risk, to start moderate exercise is recommended. But if there's something that's kind of a red flag, whatever that might be, don't just brush it under the carpet and be like, well, we're not going to worry about it. It'll be all right. Nothing's going to happen. That's where you run into problems. So kind of keep that in mind. You want to be vigilant. And if there is an issue, then try to figure out what's the proper way to work through that issue. Physically active individuals should modify their exercise program in response to variations in their exercise capacity, habitual level, and the environment. So this is more chapters 6 and 8. If something's going on, if you're sick or if it's very hot outside, humid, you might have to adjust, or cold. you might have to adjust the way you exercise and the things you do. Again, this is putting it into print. If a lot of times it's a matter of using a bit of common sense. And that's it.